Hey, what post game interview? The game being the intro to matrices final year, the intro to matrices and linear algebra final exam. But yeah, let's do it. First of all, before I even get into that, something I've noticed, maybe it's because of studying for this game exam, maybe it's because of Instagram, whatever. Um, but like when I'm doing math, sometimes I have like these British football commentators in my head, like describing myself doing the math. I think it's one of the most fun and beneficial skills I've developed through this whole studying process. I'm really grateful for it. I hope to continue to have like this. It's just an entertaining way to do math. I think it feels much more rewarding, like when you're doing the small steps in math, which are really important for math in general, but really, really important for like stuff too, matrices and all that. Um, but yeah, British commentators have been a really cool skill to develop in my head. But besides that, how did the exam go? I think it went well. I think something that usually happens when it comes to my math exams is I have a fundamental disrespect for the basics or the fundamentals. And I think that wasn't the case this time. I think there was a respect and understanding of the basics. I think I think I did, with the time I gave myself to study, I think I did cover a good amount of material. I think I'm happy. I think I do understand it's not even just like regurgitation with this. I think I understand the concepts very pretty well. So I'm really happy with that. The stuff I knew. Like I remember I saw orthogonal projections. I thought orthogonal basis. I saw oh gosh, I was gonna do it because orthogonal normal. I was gonna do it because I just thought it was gonna be a waste of time. Orthogonal basis, orthogonal projection. Um, and it was orthogonal complement, right? I saw all those stuff, and I was like, dang, that was my thing. Going back to British commentators, man, like it felt like, oh, that was just my time to shine on the exam. And I was like, I think it was the last question. I didn't do the exam in a linear order. I like went question to question, count based on the points. Sometimes I'll go for like really high hitting points, and maybe depending on the time, which I'll touch on soon, I'll go for smaller points that questions with smaller amount of points rewarded, just because it was a smaller question. I could rack up more points that way. But yeah, what I think I did fall short on is where understanding. I said I understood the concepts pretty well, but I don't think I actually manipulated that understanding enough in my studying. I was very used to the questions where it's like, okay, you have this and this, do the formula, and then done, right? But when it comes to like asking stuff like, okay, true or false, like those I was not prepared for. I think that's where I kind of fell short, just in understanding the concepts, but not understanding like how to manipulate the concepts to derive my answers, if that makes sense. So I think that was my shortcoming. I also don't think I accounted for time properly. I'll go into that more shortly. But I think in my studying process, I was working with. I only did. I think I did one exam where I really worked on time because I wasn't worried about time after I did that one. I was like, okay, I have a bunch of. The time I gave myself for the exam was shorter. I didn't finish the thing completely. I was like, okay, I got to a certain point. I was like, okay, some of these stuff I don't understand. I want to do review because I only have like 7, 9 hours left. But I still had like time left, a substantial amount of time left after I was doing the practice exam. So it's like, okay, time's not gonna be an issue. But what I didn't really account for is that those sample exams that were provided, most of them were 6 questions, right? Then for the exam, I knew it was gonna be 10 questions, but what I was thinking was it was gonna be 10 questions proportional to those 6 questions. So it's gonna be the size of those 6 questions plus 4 more. It was gonna be 10 questions, but smaller, right? And that was not the case. It was 6 questions plus 4 more of the same size. I think that was where that was the biggest issue. Like, I think overall, I frankly think the length or quantity of the questions proportional to the time wasn't appropriate. I think most people didn't finish, right? So that's I think that's a fair indicator of it wasn't. In my opinion, like when I see like exams that are well crafted, even if I don't do well, I can say that's a well crafted exam. I can appreciate it or understand point. But I think with this, I wasn't the biggest fan of how it was put together. I feel like, in my opinion, when it comes to assessments, I want the average person to be able to finish an assessment in the time allotted, and then how well they perform on that. that's up to the how well they studied, but it shouldn't be a case of where it's like, okay, now you have to choose the questions you do carefully, because that's when it comes like a thing of meta skills, like, oh, how good of a test taker are you, or like just how it doesn't test your understanding of the topics, in my opinion. I think that opinion is just based more on student experience. So I think it's not like, I think I have to always do more research on this. People with much more experience in this, but I just don't. I'm not the biggest fan of that when I'm doing assessments, because it just feels like, okay, if I have 10 questions, I can't give the appropriate amount of time to each one. And I feel like I'm kind of feeling the question. I don't even enjoy it anymore because now it's not even fun. When I was doing this video before, I was thinking of an analogy where it's like each question to me is like raising a child, right? And let's say you're raising them from 1 to 18, kick them off to college, and you're done with them, and you check in on them like every now and then, right? I think that's how questions are in a sense. But then if I have like the lifespan of a fruit fly, and I have to raise like 10 kids, all like after like born after one another, the analogy is really weird. And I don't think I can do that appropriately, right? It's not gonna be the best results are not gonna be there. I think that was the case for this exam. I think the moment I should really have like realized that from the start was when the professor said, "Hey, you guys are probably not gonna finish this on time." I thought you were just like saying, "Okay," like I didn't really like I understood what you were saying, but it didn't click in my head or register properly. So I think there's a question I did skip overall. There were some questions where I didn't dedicate the appropriate amount of time. And to be fair, those questions, like I said earlier, were the questions where it was meant to manipulate the concepts to derive an answer, like your understanding of the concept, not an equation itself, but rather like your understanding of how the theorems or the properties related to a certain concept in intricate matrices in linear algebra. So those ones I kind of just didn't dedicate enough time. And there's an argument to be had. I think a very good argument that like even if the time was there, what difference could be had in how I approached the question. The only thing I can think of, like maybe I could have done more practice, but then I don't know. Like I've experimented, like, or maybe if like it's a true or false, I can say, okay, let me find a counterexample, and if I can't, then it's probably true. But I think that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I think it was a fair exam. I think the questions that I did do, and I think I did do well on them. I think it was really nice. I really enjoyed that part. Those were like the orthogonal ones I touched on earlier. But then there was like 5 minutes left in the exam, and there was a question I was going to skip about, because it was a diagonalization problem, and it was basically like. So like you have matrix A, and matrix A equals the eigenvalues as a matrix times the eigenvalues as like a diagonal matrix times the inverse of the eigenvectors matrix, right? And then one thing you meant to find like the inverse of that eigenvector thing, right? And they gave you the eigenvectors, not being too crazy there, but they also had to do the power rule. And the previous video I talked about how I didn't actually study enough for the power rule. So I was really worried. I was like, oh damn, I'm not gonna be able to do this in like a time. But I say, you know what, like. I have nothing to lose. I don't like giving up. Like when I say stuff like I can't or I give up, like my mind gets very like triggered on those stuff. So then I logged in. The British commentators kind of logged in as well. It came like a whole last minute thing. It was very fun. I think what I really loved about that, I think it reminded me of my love for the game, the sport, math. It's just like how everything comes together. Like initially I thought there's no way this is gonna come together. There's probably a bunch of calculations I have to do, but the stuff was falling in place like very well. I was like, dang. Like when you're doing like elementary row operations to get it to, or row reduction to get to reduced row echelon form, sometimes that can take a minute, but then it was very, very well put together. I was like, dang, I love when that happens. I just fell in place together. It was a beautiful showcasing of I think my skills, and then I think the question was a bit easy as well. I don't know if it was a 7-point question, if a 15-point question, a 20-point question. I know I got it done. I think I did. I think I did do a pretty good showcasing of my skills there. Something that does frighten me though is I think one of my biggest shortcomings when it comes to this class in general is it's a lot of computation, it's a lot of calculation, because it seems like it's simple calculations like add this, subtract this, maybe multiply here and there. But the issue is that you're doing that for a bunch of numbers, right? So it can become a bit confusing. So either sometimes you can mix up a number, or if like you write a plus sign wrong or a minus sign like slightly wrong, as you're doing your next step,
you can misinterpret that as either the opposite of what it's meant to be, and that messes up your whole thing. Like it can take you to the reduced restaurant form, to the identity matrix, and that's just not what you want. It is. But yeah, I'm overall happy. I think what I need to do next time for a class like this, I think I didn't do my New Year goal, or I didn't approach this class I should have, and from the beginning. Something I wanted to do was more iterative studying, where it was like, okay, every like week I was studying for this class, dedicate this amount of time. I didn't do that. I can be very honest with that. I think I left a bulk of studying to be done, like in the last phase of this class, and that just wasn't the best. Because even if I did get like the computation stuff down, and like on the what it is, understood the equations, I don't think I had a proper understanding of how to manipulate the concepts. And I think that's something that takes time. That's something that takes experience. There's a lot of theorems to maybe be understood, and that's something I just didn't do. So I think that's something I kept on with iterative practice, and just having a consistent schedule with this class. But yeah, I'm really happy. I think this was a very fun exam to study for. I wasn't the biggest fan of how it was crafted. I do think there's going to be a curve, a good chunk. I want to say 80% of people didn't finish on time. And as I was calculating, I think this is another short form of mine, was kind of knew I wasn't confident in the exam, right? So I was calculating, okay, what might the curve be? And where I was doing that, I was like, okay, where do I fall online with the skills of the people in this class? And that was something I think got to me like around like the time the exam was ending. I was looking around to see how people are doing. That's something I don't think you should ever do in the exam. So that's another shortcoming. Just being more confident in general, I think would be better in the future. But yeah. I think my favorite aspects was orthogonal projections, orthogonality. I didn't really do anything that I had to, or like I didn't. For the orthogonal projection, I didn't like do the orthonormal thing, because orthonormal actually makes it, I think, a bit faster. But then I was just like, I didn't want to calculate and divide it by the. I didn't want to divide it because I just felt like a waste of time. But I did think I put a good showcasing of what I knew. I think that's something that was really important to me. It was okay. I've put time into this, so I might as well show the fruits of my labor. But yeah, I'm really just praying it goes well. It goes more than well. Get that A plus. And we just take these skills to apply them to the future, because I think this is a class that also is important to understand like stuff like machine learning and stuff like that. So it's time to take those skills to the next level. Plus, with the new skill of British football commentators in my head as I'm doing math, I think that's gonna be something that's really fun to just take forward and just keep on loving the game, loving math in general. But besides that, I have nothing else to say. So have a great day.